Welcome ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to FudgeMuppet. My name is Scott and today I present to you a big undertaking, a video that encompasses all of the history from the 4th era in the Elder Scrolls universe. If you do enjoy this kind of video, please do give it a like, it lets us know that you love it. And the 1st, 2nd and 3rd era explained videos are linked in the description below. This video will cover the final era of accurately documented history, meaning that you can watch the entirety of the Elder Scrolls history eras 1 to 4 with the exception of the Dawn and Merethic eras, which get a little too unprecise and hazy with some of the events and a lack of concrete dates. We may still actually do the Dawn and Merethic eras if there is a demand for them, but without further ado, let's get into the video. This is the 4th era explained. There's a lot of time that goes between the events of Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion and Elder Scrolls 5 Skyrim. 2 centuries, in fact. We left off the 3rd era with the Oblivion Crisis and the end of the Septim Dynasty, and we enter the 4th era in Skyrim with centuries gone by coloured by disaster and conflict. The opening of the 4th era, year 021, the aftermath of the Oblivion Crisis leaves lots of damage and lots of cleanup for the people of Tamriel. Without an heir to the throne of the Empire, High Chancellor Okato and the Blades try to maintain order. However, the provinces of the Empire begin to take advantage of the Empire's weakened state. Black Marsh, the home of the Argonians, secedes from the Empire, becoming an independent nation. The Crystal Tower of the Somerset Isle, an architectural monument of great cultural significance to the Ultima, was destroyed during the invasion of the Daedra. In the wake of the destruction and the bloodshed of the Oblivion Crisis, the Thalmor claimed credit for driving back the Daedra, and then they began purging any opposition in the government. Since the Elder Council was unable to determine who should become the new emperor, High Chancellor Okato reluctantly became potentate until imperial rule could be re-established as per the terms of the Elder Council Charter. Troubling times persist on Tamriel for a few years before they would be punctuated by the devastating eruption of Red Mountain in the 5th year of the 4th era. This would be known as the Red Year, when Vivek, the last surviving member of the Tribunal in Morrowind, suddenly disappeared at the turn of the era. The meteor Bardau that he had held in stasis above the city of Vivek in Vardenfell had become unstable. Vuhon and Esmar Sul made a deal with the Daedric Prince Clavicus File, which resulted in the creation of the Ingenium to keep Bardau floating. In order to work properly, the Ingenium needed mortal souls. Firstly, only the souls of criminals and outlaws were used to run the Ingenium. 10 souls were needed per day. Eventually, Vuhon found out that particular souls could power the Ingenium for months. The Ingenium was operated for 5 years since Vivek's disappearance during the Oblivion Crisis. Esmar Sul's wife, Ilzaven, was chosen to be one of the sacrificed because she had the right type of soul. Sul tried to rescue her, but in doing so he damaged the Ingenium and Bardau crashed into the city of Vivek, resulting in seismic activity, which then caused the eruption of Red Mountain, destroying Vardenfell and coating much of Morrowind in ash. The Red Year is not the only tragedy that would befall the Dunmer people of Morrowind. In the 6th year of the 4th era, the Argonian invasion of Morrowind begins. The Argonians cut a bloody swath through southern Morrowind. The Dunmer, already dealing with the devastation that the Red Year brought, were unprepared to deal with the brutal slaughter that the Argonians unleashed on them. House Dress and Telvanni were the most affected, having many of their territories conquered and purged. The reason for this invasion is not entirely clear. Some say the Thalmor incited the uprising, but the most likely reason is revenge for the slavery the Argonians had suffered at the hands of the Dunmer for centuries, especially considering that House Dress and House Telvanni, the biggest proponents of slavery, seemed to cop the worst of it. However, the Argonians did not stop with them, and likely would have continued their crusade of Morrowind had the armies of House Redoran not organised and stopped them from continuing their genocide. The capital of Morrowind, a city called Mournhold, was sacked by the Argonians, and the capital was then moved to Blacklight. In the aftermath, many Dunmer refugees spread from Morrowind and sought refuge in surrounding provinces, for example, the Nord city of Windhelm. You may also be interested to know that the Shrine of Azura in Skyrim was built by refugees who had fled to the Frozen Land. Year 10 marks a time of more strife, more disaster, as is the theme of the Fourth Era. Potentate Okato was assassinated, beginning a 7-year-long event known as the Storm Crown Interregnum. It is speculated that the Thalmor orchestrated Okato's assassination, which makes sense considering that the Thalmor used this as an opportunity to stage a coup, overthrowing the rightful kings and queens of the Aldmer. They also slaughtered any who were not of the blood of the Aldmer, meaning death for those not Elven. The Storm Crown Interregnum is a time of infighting, plots, backstabbing, wars, and pretenders to the throne, such as Thul's the Gibbering. Violent, unnatural storms lashed the Imperial City several times during this anarchy, always with the eye of the storm looking directly down upon White Gold Tower, as if it were the judgment of the Nine Divines. Less notably in this year marks the death of Gratian Corellius. After receiving a letter from the East Empire Company, Gratian Corellius and his assistant Milius set sail for Raven Rock off the coast of Solstheim. Once they arrive, they enter the mine to examine whatever the miners uncovered. They reveal that the miners uncovered an ancient Nordic barrow belonging to something called the Bloodskull clan. Then they encountered a weapon called the Bloodskull Blade and remove it from its pedestal, only to immediately be attacked by Draga. Despite them successfully killing the Draga, both men die of their wounds, but not before coming across a strange door with unusual markings on it. Unfortunately, their bodies were never found, and the mine was shut down shortly afterwards, damaging Raven Rock's reputation. In addition, the East Empire Company claimed that both men died in a tunnel accident, only complicating matters even further. During the years 11 to 15, many Orc refugees flee east into Skyrim after their home of Orsinium was sacked once again by the combined forces of High Rock and Hammerfell. Come year 16, the High King of Skyrim grants the island of Solstheim to the Dark Elves to help the refugees of the province after Red Mountain. Solstheim is now officially part of Morrowind. The Storm Crown Interregnum comes to an end after 7 bloody years when the Colovian warlord Titus Mede seizes control of the Imperial City with only less than 1,000 men. He deposed Thul's the Gibbering and became Emperor of Tamriel and hammered what remained of the Empire back together. He was first seen as a conqueror, unworthy to be Emperor. Most members of the Elder Council were in favour of Thul's the Gibbering, but Titus's close assistant, Hiram, convinced them to see Titus more as a liberator rather than a conqueror. He kept Hiram around because he didn't have a choice. Hiram was the most important man in the Empire besides him, so Titus put someone called Latina Res in the minister's office to spy on him and warn the Emperor about any potential threat from him. In his first year as Emperor, year 18, Titus Mede's wife gave birth to their son, Atrebus Mede. Year 20, once a meeting place in Skyrim for Dunmer refugees fleeing Morrowind, Refugees' Rest is decreed a monument by the Jarls of Skyrim, commemorating the struggles of the Dunmer refugees. As the Empire remains turbulent with its new ruler, Titus Mede, still stitching it back together, the Thalmor successfully seized control of the Somerset Isles in its entirety, year 22, having removed all opposition and purged non-elves or dissidents. In the 29th year of the Fourth Era, the Thalmor back a coup in Valenwood, overthrowing Valenwood's government. The Empire and its Bosmeri allies are caught off guard and defeated by the Ultima forces that invaded Valenwood, supported by Bosmeri soldiers following the coup. The Aldmeri Dominion is reformed and all contact with the Empire is severed for 70 years. Most Imperial scholars believe that during this period there was some internal strife in Alinor, and it's likely that during this time the Thalmor were consolidating their control of the two lands and making sure they remove any internal opposition. Year 38. Vundheim, a great warrior of Windhelm, dies and his son Deroct lights a candle in his honour. This candle, for reasons unknown, is still alight in the house, which has now become a tavern called Candlehearth Hall. Year 40, the giant floating city called Umbriel appears on the coast of Blackmarsh and makes its way to Morrowind. This is part of the events that take place in the Elder Scrolls novels, Lord of Souls and Infernal City. Long story short, Atrebus Mede, 22-year-old son of the Emperor, Anaeg Hoinhart, a 17-year-old Breton girl, her Argonian friend Mir Glim, and an aged Esmar Sul, the Dunmer who helped develop the Ingenium, together stop Vuhon and the floating city of Umbriel. In the year 42, the Night of Green Fire occurs in Sentinel. Ultima dissidents who had fled Sentinel from Thalmor in Somerset Isles are attacked by Thalmor operatives. Their efforts to fight back against the Thalmor are in vain, and by the time Imperial Legion soldiers arrived, the entire refugee district of the city had been destroyed. The event became known as the Night of Green Fire, due to the destructive magic attacks employed by both sides during the battle. The Keepers of the Razor are first mentioned in Imperial records in the year 50. The Keepers of the Razor are an organization that found Mehrunes' razor, split it into 3 parts, and passed those pieces down through their generations to make sure the razor does not get reformed. Year 65 of the 4th era, Brara Morvayn, ruler of Solstheim, passes away and is replaced by her son Leril Morvayn. Year 95, an unsuccessful attempt is made on the life of Councillor Leril Morvayn, a plot masterminded by House Hlalu, who was seeking to take control of Solstheim from House Redoran. In the year 98, the 2 moons, Massa and Secunda, suddenly disappear and would not return for 2 years. These years would be known as the Void Nights. Since the Khajiit of Elsewhere are incredibly dependent on the moons for religious, cultural, and biological reasons, it devastated them greatly, especially considering the moon phases affect the very way they are born and are shaped. The 2nd century of the 4th era opens up with quite a few interesting occurrences. Year 100 of the 4th era begins with the return of the moons, Massa and Secunda. The Thalmor quickly take credit for the return of the moons, however it is unknown whether they really did bring the moons back, or perhaps they knew they were going to return and pretended they brought them back. Regardless, the Khajiit of Elsewhere credit the Thalmor for the moon's return, and as a byproduct, Imperial influence in the region decreases while Thalmor influence increases. It was around this time in history that the Isle of Artaeum also disappears once again, and the Sijic Order along with it. Year 115 marks the year that the Thalmor influence in Elsewhere reached its peak, causing the dissolution of the Elsewhere Confederacy, reverting back to the old kingdoms of Anaquina and Palatine. Imperial influence is entirely removed, and the kingdoms Anaquina and Palatine both join the Aldmeri Dominion as client states. The trend of natural disasters in the 4th era continues when in the year 122 the Great Collapse of Winterhold occurs. Constant storms and waves from the Sea of Ghosts pelts the city of Winterhold, dragging most of it into the sea. However, the College of Winterhold remains mysteriously and curiously unscathed, left standing on a large pillar of remaining land. The populace of Winterhold directly blame the college for the disaster, but the college denies the claims. This event, filled with controversies, was known as the Great Collapse. Year 129, Hosgun Crossdaggers had controversially ascended to Riften's throne in the year 98 and instituted harsh taxes for his personal benefits. In this year, year 129, the citizens finally rebel and burn Hosgun's castle to the ground with him inside, but the fire spreads to the rest of the city. Riften is rebuilt over the next 5 years, but remains little more than a glorified fortress of wooden structures and rough stonework compared to the sprawling city of old. Year 130, Leril Morvayn, Councillor of House Redoran in Solstheim, uses his personal wealth to repair the Bulwark, the great wall structure that protects Ravenrock from the ash storms. Year 150, a small force of Argonians arrive on the island of Solstheim, hell-bent on destruction of the Dark Elves, and Leril Morvayn and his Redoran Guard successfully repel this invasion. Emperor Titus Mede II ascends to the throne of the Empire in the year 168, being handed the Empire as a shadow of its former self. Its only territories that remain prosperous are High Rock, Skyrim, and Cyrodiil. Hammerfell is plagued with Crown and Forebear infighting. Morrowind is still recovering from the immense destruction of the Red Year and Dargonian invasion. Blackmarsh is seceded from the Empire over a century ago, and Elsewhere and Valenwood have joined the Aldmeri Dominion. And year 171 marks the beginning of the Great War, probably the most important event in the 4th era. On the 30th of Frostfall, the Aldmeri Dominion sent an ambassador to the Imperial City with a gift in a covered cart and an ultimatum for the new emperor. The long list of demands included staggering tributes, disbandment of the Blades, outlawing the worship of Talos, and ceding large sections of Hammerfell to the Dominion. A quote by Legate Justinius Quintius explains this best. Despite the warnings of his generals of the Empire's military weakness, Emperor Titus Mede II rejected the ultimatum. The Thalmor ambassador upended the cart, spilling over 100 heads on the floor, every Blade's agent in Somerset and Valenwood, and so began the Great War, which would consume the Empire and the Aldmeri Dominion for the next 5 years. Within days, the Aldmeri armies invaded Hammerfell and Cyrodiil simultaneously. A strong force commanded by the Thalmor general Lord Narafin attacked Cyrodiil from the south, marching out of hidden camps in northern Elsewhere and flanking the Imperial defences along the Valenwood border. Leeuwin soon fell to the invaders, while Breville was cut off and besieged. While this attack was underway, an Aldmeri army under Lady Araniella crossed into western Cyrodiil from Valenwood, bypassing Anvil and Kvatch and crossing into Hammerfell. The disunited Redguard forces offered only scattered resistance to the invaders, and much of the southern coastline was quickly overrun. The greatly outnumbered Imperial legions retreated across the Alakid Desert in the now famous March of Thirst. However, the surprising initial success of Lord Narafin's attack led the Thalmor to believe that the Empire was weaker than they had thought. Year 172, the Aldmeri Dominion makes taking the Imperial City their primary goal, and they march further into Cyrodiil. The cities of Breville and Anvil both fell to the Dominion, and fierce naval clashes along the Niben ensued as the Imperials tried to hold the eastern bank. By the end of the year, Lord Narafin had reached the walls of the Imperial City. The next year, year 173, the survivors of the March of Thirst regrouped in northern Hammerfell, joined by reinforcements from High Rock. Imperial resistance in Cyrodiil was strong, but the seemingly unstoppable Aldmeri advance continued. Fresh legions from Skyrim bolstered the Emperor's main army in the Imperial City, but the Aldmeri forced the crossing of the Niben and began advancing in force up the eastern bank. By the end of the year, the Imperial City was surrounded on 3 sides. Only the northern supply route to Bruma remained open. Earlier that year, the Forebear army from Sentinel broke the siege of Hegaith, which is a crown city, leading to the reconciliation between the crowns and the Forebears. Lady Araniella and her Aldmeri army continued across the Alakir Desert and met General Decianus in a bloody and indecisive clash, but eventually Decianus withdrew, leaving it to the Aldmeri Dominion, which was too weakened to continue advancing. Year 174 of the Fourth Era is the year that the Thalmor leadership committed all available forces to the campaign in Cyrodiil. During the spring, Aldmeri reinforcements gathered in southern Cyrodiil, and on the 12th of Second Seed, they launched a massive assault on the Imperial City itself. One army drove north to completely surround the city, while Lord Narafin's main force attacked the walls from the south, east, and west. The Emperor's decision to fight his way out of the city rather than make a last stand was a bold one. No general dared advise him to abandon the capital, but Titus II was proven right in the end. The Imperial City falls to the invaders, and the Imperial Palace is burned, the White Gold Tower is looted, and the Aldmeri commit many atrocities against the defenseless populace of the city. Titus II links up with the reinforcements heading south from Skyrim under the command of General Jonna, but as a side effect of Imperial legions moving into Cyrodiil, it left Skyrim less secure, and in Markarth this led to a forsworn uprising. The Reachmen managed to overthrow the Nords and take control of the Reach. During the winter, crossing from year 174 to 175, the Thalmor seemed to have believed that the war in Cyrodiil was all but over. They made several attempts to negotiate with Titus II, and the Emperor encouraged them in their belief that he was preparing to surrender. Meanwhile, he gathered his forces to retake the Imperial City. In this year occurs the vitally important Battle of the Red Ring, the battle that would decide the fate of the Empire. Titus II divided his forces into 3 armies. One army with legions from Hammerfell under General Decianus, who were hidden in the Clovian highlands near Coral. The Aldmeri were unaware that he was no longer in Hammerfell, possibly because of the Imperial veterans that Decianus had left behind, leading Lady Araniella to believe that she still faced an Imperial army. The second army, the largely Nord legions under General Jonna, took up position near Cheydinhall. The main army was commanded by the forgotten forgotten hero, wearing the Emperor's armor, and would undertake the main assault of the Imperial City from the north. For more information on this forgotten hero, you can check out our video on the Elder Scrolls Legends main storyline to get a better understanding of that, because it has to kind of do with retcons and stuff. On the 30th of Rain's Hand, the bloody battle of the Red Ring began as General Decianus swept down on the city from the west, while General Jonna's legionnaires drove south along the Red Ring Road. In a 2-day assault, Jonna's army crossed the Nibben and advanced west, attempting to link up with Decianus' legion and thus surround the Imperial City. Lord Narafin was taken by surprise by Decianus' assault, but Jonna's troops faced bitter resistance as the Aldmeri counterattacked from Breville and Skingrad. The heroic Nord legionnaires held firm, beating off any Aldmeri attacks. By the 5th day of battle, the Aldmeri army in the Imperial City was surrounded. Titus II led the assault from the north, personally capturing Lord Narafin. It is rumoured that the Emperor wielded the famed sword Goldbrand, though this has never been officially confirmed by the Imperial government. An attempt by the Aldmeri to break out of the city to the south was blocked by the unbreakable shield wall of General Jonna's battered legions. In the end, the main Aldmeri army in Cyrodiil was completely destroyed. Lord Narafin was kept alive for 33 days, hanging from the White Gold Tower. It is not recorded where his body was buried, if it was buried at all. One source claims he was carried off by a winged Daedra on the 34th day. However, if you check out our Elder Scrolls Legends, like I said, you can see what went down behind the scenes and the sort of hidden story, I guess. Later that year, the White Gold Concordat was signed, officially ending the war. However, many thought this was a weak decision. 2 provisions in the treaty had serious impacts on what remained of the Empire. First, large portions of southern Hammerfell were ceded to the Aldmeri Dominion. The Red Guards, outraged that the Empire paid for the treaty with their lands, began their own separate war with the Aldmeri, and as a result, the Empire renounced Hammerfell as an imperial province and abandoned the Red Guards. The Elder Scrolls also mysteriously disappear this year, leading the cult of Ancestor Moth to set out and search for them. Year 176, the Markarth Incident. Desperate to retake the Reach and with no Imperial legions available due to the Great War, Skyrim enlisted the aid of a Nord militia led by Ulfric Stormcloak to retake the Reach by promising them free worship of Talos. Within the year, the Nord militia successfully drove the Reachmen from the city of Markarth and reclaimed it. Due to pressure from the Aldmeri Dominion, the Empire ultimately reneged on its decision to allow Talos worship in Skyrim, and this is one of the key motivators of the Stormcloak Rebellion. In this same year, Gallus Destinius, Guildmaster of the Thieves Guild, is murdered by his friend, Mercer Frey. Year 180. With the resilience and strength that are characteristic of the Redguard warriors, they fought the invading Aldmeri to a standstill and signed their own treaty, the Second Treaty of Stros Makai. This forced the withdrawal of Aldmeri forces from Hammerfell. By the year 181, the ebony mines of Raven Rock had completely dried up, forcing the colony to turn to hunting and fishing for sustenance. Year 188, Wayrest, the great city of High Rock, is sacked by raiding corsairs, and by proxy the Dark Brotherhood's sanctuary there is destroyed. In the same year, a war of control being waged by Cyrodiil's 2 largest skooma traffickers leads to violent fighting within the city. The lucky old lady statue is destroyed in the fighting, and the Night Mother's crypt is raided, and Alassane de Prey, listener of the Dark Brotherhood, is killed defending it. The Night Mother's remains would later come into the care of Cicero, the very same Cicero that would bring the remains to the Skyrim sanctuary in the year 201. Now for the year that marks many, many events, the setting for the game of Skyrim and the most recent date in Elder Scrolls history, I present to you year 201 of the Fourth Era, just over 200 years since the Oblivion crisis. Following the Markarth incident, Ulfric was arrested. His father, the Bear of Eastmarch, died while Ulfric was imprisoned, and Ulfric delivered his eulogy via a letter that he had smuggled out of prison. He was eventually set free and returned to Windhelm, where he took up his father's place as Jarl. Upon the death of the High King Islod, the Moot was convened to formally name his son Torrig as the new High King, though the Moot only convenes as a formality when a High King dies with a direct heir. Ulfric used the forum to voice his desire for independence from the Empire. Torrig knew Ulfric was a war hero and respected him, and the daring he displayed during the Moot further impressed the younger Nord. Soon after, Ulfric travelled to Solitude to see the young High King. Torrig and his court believed Ulfric had come to further discuss his desire for Skyrim's independence and welcomed him, By the time they realized Ulfric was there to challenge Torrig, it was too late to stop it. Under ancient Nordic traditions, Torrig had no choice but to accept Ulfric's challenge for the throne, lest he risk losing face for an act of cowardice, which would lead to a recall of the moot and likely his deposal as High King anyway. Torrig accepted and was slain by Ulfric. According to Sabil Stentor, the court wizard of Solitude who had helped raise Torrig, the young High King likely would have given Ulfric's request to emancipate Skyrim from the Empire serious consideration, as he held Ulfric in high esteem, which is rather tragic. He rallied the Jarls of Winterhold, Dawnstar and Riften to his cause, officially starting the Stormcloak Rebellion against the Empire and its supporters, the Jarls of Solitude, Falkreath, Morthal and Markarth. Whiterun by default supports the Empire, but is largely conflicted and remains neutral in the war, refusing to take sides. Ulfric, while in Darkwater Crossing, is ambushed and captured by General Tullius and is brought to Helgen for an execution, an affair in which the last Dragonborn gets caught up in. Alduin shows up and burns Helgen to the ground, and Ulfric Stormcloak escapes back to Windhelm to continue his cause. And of course, you the last Dragonborn and protagonist of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim survives and begins their journey. So the Dragonborn marches on to Whiterun, kills a dragon, meets the Greybeards, helps the Blades, meets Paarthurnax, learns a bunch of shouts, finds some Elder Scrolls and prevents the end of the world by defeating Alduin. The Dawnguard is reformed and the ancient vampire Lord Harkon is defeated with Auriel's bow. Miraak awakens on Solstheim, but the last Dragonborn defeats him and becomes Hermaeus Mora's new champion, gaining forbidden knowledge of Apocrypha. The ebony mines of Raven Rock also open after an investigation reveals an old Draga crypt and tons of unmined ebony. Another plot on Leril Morvain's life by House Lalu assassins is also thwarted. The companions of Whiterun reassemble Wuthrad and the Silver Hand are mostly defeated. Mercer Frey is killed, the Skeleton Key recovered, and the Thieves Guild is restored to its former glory. The Dark Brotherhood's numbers are significantly reduced, however the assassination of Titus Mede II is pulled off, and the Dawnstar Sanctuary lives on. And the College of Winterhold discovers the Eye of Magnus in Sarthal, and that it is eventually secured by the Sigic Order after the Thalmor plot for its control through Ancano is thwarted. As far as Civil War is concerned, we do not know the canon outcome. However, it is likely that it will be undecided, hinted at by the name of the main quest, Season Unending. I can easily imagine an Elder Scrolls 6 in High Rock or Hammerfell where you hear about the Empire and Stormcloak's war still waging. But ladies and gentlemen, that is it. The Fourth Era explained. Not the happiest of eras, one rife with great disasters, wars, and a crumbling empire. The state of Tamriel is in one of its worst since the Second Era. We have now done the First, Second, Third, and Fourth Eras explained. First to Third are linked in the description. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like and share it around. We are also considering doing the Dawn and Merethic eras, perhaps even in a combined video. We don't know yet, but let us know what you think. Thanks again, guys. You've been great. My name is Scott, and I'll be back to nerd out with you again in the next one.